Hi, my name is Ocean, and this is my LeadCast podcast. I'm going to be asking Eric a few questions about decision making and planning. What do you do as a job?
I am the director of business systems at a company that does asset management, back office services. So we help companies that are basically like mutual funds for rich people, people with a lot of money. They have to have at least $1 million invest in our client's company, and then they go out and they purchase different kinds of assets. They make loans, they buy receivables. Everything is a custom asset, nothing that you could buy like over the counter, not stocks, not bonds, not your typical loan. And most of it is commercial lending.
So you guys lend stuff?
Yep, so we manage for them. They buy the assets, they figure out what assets they want to buy, and they design products too. They design loans for commercial purposes that are usually fairly short-term loans, and they're very unique. They lend to very specific markets. We also have another line of business where we do collections on student loans that have gone past due, and we manage the collectors, and we set up programs for them to basically make them compete with each other to see who does the best collections, and that makes the overall collections go up.
Oh, okay. Do you say that you plan a lot when you are doing your job?
Yes. So most of our business, both of the businesses that we're in, we have custom solutions. Like, there is no software out there you could buy off the shelf that does what we do. So we program our own, we develop our own ways of doing things, and we make decisions. Like, sometimes it's just a very simple thing and we could do it in a spreadsheet. And so people do that. And then other things are more complicated and we do it, we write a program to take care of it. We do automation. We have programs that can read emails and do transactions based on what the email says. Lots of different ways. We receive files from outside and we import them to our system. So there's a lot of traffic, a lot of things going on, and planning is very important. We do a lot of planning because all these things are custom, so we have to write down, the requirements of what we want to do. Sometimes we make a diagram of all the steps, and then we talk it out, and we make sure we got it covered. Then we do a prototype, and we see if that's working. And we turn that prototype into a production process.
Wow, sounds like a lot.
It's a lot, yeah. I definitely prefer working iteratively because once you start down the road of trying to accomplish something, you may find things, aren't what you thought they were when you started. So you have to be flexible and iterative in the design process. So one of our major reasons for existing is our flexibility. If our client says we want to do something special, we do it in a very short time. Partially because we understand the purpose of what they're doing. We understand investments, we understand accounting for investments, and we understand automation and programming.
And what happens when people don't plan at your job, or when there's no plan?
Terrible things. Mostly waste of money. And then our clients get upset with us because we're too slow implementing what they asked us to. So we had a case a few months ago where I thought somebody was far enough along and understood what the process we needed him to program was. And after months, he had basically done nothing. And the client, was getting anxious, like, why haven't you made this happen yet? And so ended up having to take over the project for him and do it myself. And that's, I got it done, but it's better if I can train people to do it for me and just basically give them the idea of what they need to do, do the planning, and then they do it. If I don't do that planning, then it ends up taking up my time, and then I can't do planning because I'm busy working.
When do you decide, like, you might want to hire new people or keep people? Like, how do you decide who you're going to keep there? Is that hard?
Yeah, we're a very small group, but we're very demanding. Everybody that works with us needs to be fairly strong at finding their own path, because we're small and we're trying to be nimble and do the things that our clients ask, and they ask a lot. So there's always a backlog of things that need to be done. And people who can't find their way, given enough planning, right, but they still can't find their way, they don't last long. So everybody's got to be able to pull their own weight, and everybody that works in my company now is at least above average in their field. So in my experience in all kinds of work over the many years is you get a couple of different kinds of people. You get some people that are parrots. That's what I call parrots. They're fantastic at reading a textbook and answering every question on a test. But if you give them a slightly different situation, they're paralyzed. They can't figure out what they're supposed to do. So we try to avoid working with those kind of people. Also, no politics. The goal is get the job done. So finger pointing is out. Right? It's there's a saying. Figure out how you're going to fix it. Don't waste time figuring out who did what. Right? Just figure out what's the problem. How do we fix it, and move forward. And over time, that works better than arguing about who did what. That's just a waste of time. It just makes everybody unhappy. And if somebody needs to be trained, then we train them. So that's a much better approach.
Yes, I agree. That sounds reasonable. And I'm going to talk about decisions.
Mm-hmm.
Most decisions start with a problem, and then you have to think of a few options and pick the best one that you think fits the situation. Can you think of a hard decision you've had to make at work lately?
Hard. So we have a lot of different difficult situations that come up. And sometimes, like we were producing a tracker to make sure a process went from beginning to end, that we could track all the steps in the middle and make sure the steps didn't get stale, right? If it's waiting 3 days, it's too long, right? So make sure that we know that the process is moving along and has been completed. Right? Simple thing, just different steps. Plug in the date that the step was completed, and record a couple things like what was the file name associated with that step, so we can track it if we need to. So we had a guy, we gave him the lead to develop it, and he had all kinds of ways he wanted to automate the process, and which is an okay thought, but I kept telling him, first we'll need the manual process. You always need a manual process as a backup. If your automation fails, a person needs to be able to do it. So after we talked about it for a while, and we just started talking about how often does somebody need to do something, we found out that the process happens about 4 times a week. Like there's 4 sets of start a process and then go through the steps and finish it. So 4 times a week. That's not enough to warrant spending programming time. If a person can finish it, in 2 hours a week, it's not worth programming. So that's one way we make decisions. Another way we make decisions is looking at the cost and benefit. Basically, what I just said, the same thing. If we're only going to save 2 hours of somebody's time, it doesn't make any sense spending thousands of dollars to develop some kind of automation to do it for them, just to save like 2 hours.
Yeah.
So we ended up, telling the developer, okay, you just got to make this work for a manual process.
Yeah, it sounds like a lot of hard decisions.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of we have a lot of times when we have to decide what level of effort we want to attach to developing a process, right? So sometimes we have a process that's already working. It's maybe mostly manual, and does the time warrant to program it and make it automated? Is it worth it? Sometimes it's not just the time. Sometimes it's the accuracy, right? So we're trying to boil down some processes that right now we get them in email, and then there are outside systems that they record the information that should be in the email, and they get it wrong. They don't put the same numbers on the email as they put in the system, and then that just wastes everybody's time when they have to go round robin and say, why is this number not equal to that number? And it's a test that we do to make sure our numbers are accurate. We always test the outside system, which is supposed to be tracking the assets on a very high level, but so it basically just tracks, the outside system just tracks the amount funded, the who, and maybe some status changes about he paid, he didn't pay, whatever, but nothing else. And everything else is done in our system. We calculate how much interest there is earned every day, how much fees there are earned every day. So we're keeping track of those balances, the high detail in our system. But we always have to tie back, so whenever we add an asset to our system, it needs to tie back to what's in the outside system as a check and balance.
Wow, yeah. It's a lot of numbers and keeping track of stuff and data.
Yeah, and it's very important to design those things to catch problems. I mean, so I tell the people that work for me, we're human, we're all going to make mistakes. So the point is that you're not. The point is not to be perfect and never make a mistake, because that's impossible. So somebody's going to make a mistake. Your responsibility as a professional is to catch those mistakes before they become a problem. Catch them as early as possible and then have a way to correct them. So it's just always going to happen. So you can make your processes better to avoid mistakes, and that works, but you're never going to eliminate them. So you need to design your system to have ways to check one thing against another. They call it dual control. 2 sources need to agree, and we check that quite every day. We do hundreds of checks to make sure that things make sense in the system, looking for errors.
So a lot of people don't have all the information when they make decisions, and they just go with what information they have.
Mm-hmm.
do you feel like you're rushed or like you have to make decisions without knowing everything?
That does happen, definitely. So whenever I'm putting a new process in place, I'm going to do what's called babysitting. I'm going to check it every day, make sure it's going the right way, talk to the people and make sure they're getting what they need, and just watch over it for a while, and then eventually hand off the monitoring to somebody else once it's settled into place. And we also do iterative development, right? A lot of times when we talk to our clients, they don't know exactly what they want. So we give them, do you want it like this? Sometimes you can have a meeting with somebody and say, what do you want? What do you want? You can do that for days and they'll never give you the answer. And then you put a prototype type in front of them, this is what you're getting. Oh no, that's wrong, this is wrong. They just see it. It's like, so you have to have a iterative process and just expect that you're not going to get it right the first time. And go early is best. Like, as soon as somebody tells you, oh, I want this, okay, is it going to look like this? Is that what you want? You make sure that you're on target so you don't waste both of each other's time.
Right. Yeah.
So good communications and an iterative process. The thinking that you designed it right the first day and then you're going to go to the end and show it to them and say, ta-da.
Yeah.
That rarely works out well. There's always, oh, that's not exactly what I meant. So, okay, that's how that works for us.
So it's better to just ask as soon as possible, or
yeah.
start it.
Turn around and answer as soon as possible, right? Like, okay, so what you mean is, you can just start out with a diagram that says this step, this step, this step, this step, and then maybe another sketch that says the answer is going to look like this, and the calculation is done this way, and make sure that they agree.
Right. Do you think that makes managers mess up a lot because of that?
I've seen it. I've definitely seen, just today we were talking about a company that was doing a software implementation, and they basically went all the way down to go live almost, and then it wasn't working, so they had to scrap the whole thing and start over. And it's just because of poor planning, and for me, I would always be doing tests, making sure that I understand how the system's going to react and that it's going to do what I want, on as many cases as I can. Obviously, you can't cover every case because if you spend that much time, it will also be a bad outcome. You spend too much money. But it definitely is important to do modeling, for instance. To do it first, maybe in a spreadsheet, and make sure you understand how the calculations are going to work, and then try to put that into the system and make sure the system comes up with the same answer. So, and do many tests like that, and test against existing process. Sometimes you're duplicating an existing process and maybe enhancing it, but you should start out getting the same answer and then the enhanced answer, which is usually just a little more detail in our case. So, okay.
Yeah, so do you think this conversation made you realize anything about leadership?
Probably. I do a lot of these things like intuitively, without really thinking about that it's a process that but yeah, whenever you try to explain to somebody else, you form a more solid understanding in your own mind, because you're forced to think through all these things and how do they relate to each other. And so yes, actually it's probably a discussion we're going to have at work, trying to formalize our process. I don't like having processes too formal, because it slows you down. Um, but you need the right level of, you know, formal planning, formal training, formal documentation. Too much documentation will, cost you a lot more than it benefits you. So I'm not somebody who likes to have like a process of, I budgeted 50 hours, and every time you touch this project, you're going to tell me how many hours you spent, and so on. It's we're small enough that I can be aware of everything that's happening. And having some tracking is good, but too much tracking will just waste your time. So the main purpose of working is accomplishing some goals, and the goal is not, a big spreadsheet that tells you what people did every day. It's somewhat useful to have a good understanding, but a high level understanding, but not too much detail. But yeah, this is an excellent point.
What advice would you give someone who wants to be in charge one day, or like be a manager?
Obviously you need to know the subject very well. So you need to study what it is you're doing and why, and what other people are doing and why, and be generally aware of how the business works. Then after that, you need to be able to train people, teach them how to do things. There's a saying, if you want to move up, replace yourself. So you need to train somebody to do your job, so you can move up.
Yes, makes sense.
Mm-hmm. And if you're good at training people and teaching them, then you will move up, because that's, most of the part what a manager does, right? They figure out what needs to be done, and they instruct people how to do it, or they find out ways how to do it, right? They figure it out. Then they instruct people what needs to be done and how it needs to be done. Maybe working with them, it's collaboration is great, but the main purpose for a manager is making the right decisions. And you need to train people also that, don't try to figure it out for 2 days and then come to me and say I couldn't do it. That's a huge waste of time, right? So make them feel very comfortable, hey, give it the old college try. If you spent half a day and can't get it, come to me. Don't spend any more time. Figure out early that you can get it or you can't get it. It's just not worth, people reinventing the wheel. I might already know the answer if you just come to me. So
it's a very great point. You had some really good information, and I appreciate you for being a guest. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.